So just a quick video today. What I want to do is I want to go through the personal statement that I wrote a few years ago for my own application. Obviously, because it was a long time ago, maybe it's not going to have as much relevance for you guys as, you know, something a bit more current, but nonetheless, I do hope it's helpful for you. Just to give you a bit of a basic detail overview of what I applied for economics and management at one university, and then I applied for economics pure at the others, which is why my personal statement's a little bit more weighted towards economics. It's about 60-40 split, I would say, to management. Bit of a risky tactic, would not do again. Not entirely sure what I was thinking at the time, but nonetheless, let's get on with it. And what I'm going to do actually is, because obviously, you know, this is a while later, so I can kind of now see a little bit better what I could have done differently, what I did well and what I did not so well. So I want to actually go through and critique it a bit and just say, you know, I want to see what I would do differently if I were to do it again today. So let's go from the first part here. So I'm splitting this into 4 parts actually, kind of how the personal statement naturally separated itself. But I was first introduced to economics while studying post-war Germany and history. So that is actually my hook. I know everybody else usually has something really kind of dramatic, and not dramatic, sorry, but a bit more personal. But I personally think this is a better start. Okay, this is one thing I do think I did well, is that I did not start with something that was a bit of, you know, I observed my dad's business, or, you know, I was walking down the street and a child, I don't know, I'm not talking about some personal experience, and I do think that is preferable. If you can, just be super honest with what do you genuinely find interesting. Like for me, this was a real, I remember even now, like how, you know, that was the only history lesson I've ever found interesting in my entire life to this day. History's great, but at the GCSE level, I mean, it was not great. So anyway, I found myself immediately intrigued by the concept of hyperinflation, so bringing in a bit of A-level knowledge, and how this, amongst other impacts, could cause life savings to be lost overnight. A bit vague, you know, I would say. I'm not entirely sure what I'm trying to say there, but I do think it does lead nicely onto this. What will I perhaps do differently? I don't know what these other impacts I am talking about here. It's a bit vague. I could definitely have maybe structured that a little bit better, and said why I'm particularly focused on hyperinflation leading to life savings. But you know, pretty short, so I'm not gonna be too harsh on myself there. So reading When Money Dies, The Nightmare of the More Hyperinflation gave me some insight into the way a country's currency could essentially die. I mean, that's not exactly a technical term, right? Dying currency, and I do wish I would have actually perhaps explained it in using the terminology, or maybe actually explaining the mechanism there. Today, if I were I wouldn't use that language today. I think it would be much better to replace that with terminology that you recognise from A-level, or if you haven't done it at that point, then use the terminology that is, you know, what university tutors would be familiar with. Wanting to learn more, I began reading The Economist magazine and realised these textbook issues are absolutely relevant to real-world concern, such as the sextillion percentage inflation achieved by Zimbabwe in 2008. I'm not sure I would use the word achieved here. Achievement kind of implies something positive. I'm not sure that this is a positive achievement. I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, but The Economist magazine, just listing that out, is not helpful. I don't know what my plan was there. And then realising these textbook issues are relevant. Yeah, I mean, like, fair. It's true. I guess you can read about it in the news, but that's not super enlightening, I have to say. Not the strongest sentence. Definitely something that I would rewrite to put in something more specific, or at least a bit more detailed. I don't know, you know, it's just a bit too obvious. Can I say that? Obvious, yeah? My increasing desire to understand the world around me led me to create my school's first current affairs society. I have greatly enjoyed running it, but look forward to analysing the concepts we have looked at with more academic rigour when I get to university. Not bad, but I would probably say maybe this concept I could have actually perhaps linked in a higher level concept on the topic of hyperinflation, perhaps. That would just show a bit of evidence of what we actually did, because this, you know, this society, we actually had a lot of really fun discussions and meetings, and I remember talking about some really interesting things. So I wish I had actually shared a topic that we had discussed, and as I said, maybe if I had actually used that to exemplify these textbook issues that we were looking at, that again could have made this a lot more powerful. As an opening goes, it's not terrible, but it is not amazing, I would say. Okay, so this now is a little bit more detailed in terms of what the subcategories of economics that I'm going into now. So, you know, being Korean, okay, fair enough. I was exposed to stories of the miracle on the Han River from an early age. It's not actually true, but you know, I mean, it doesn't we can stretch the truth. I was always astounded by the fact that mere decades ago the country had lived in conditions similar or worse to those of some sub-Saharan African nations today. I wish I would have specified those nations. I think that's generalizing massively. Anyway, sorry, just to say we lived in conditions similar, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. I would probably now, we had similar levels of growth rates, or maybe we had similar levels of FDI, or do you know what I mean? I would specify what I mean by similar conditions. Certainly would be a lot more, being more explicit basically with what I mean by that. Otherwise it's a little bit vague again. So you can see it's a running theme, but I'm just being too vague everywhere, I think. But anyway, eager to understand more about the causes of such rapid economic growth in Korea, I read Lando's The Wealth and Poverty of Nations. Fair. I was surprised by the importance of cultural factors in giving European economies an edge over other developing nations such as the Indians and Arabians. I don't know why I've put like Indians and Arabians. Oh, I remember. It's because that's the terminology that he uses in the book, I think, actually. I think that's a great sentence. I think that's really nice. I think I've, you know, really pinpointed, I think I've really picked out a point that maybe isn't one of the more common points, but is really interesting and relates really well, I think, actually to what I'm just about to discuss in the second half here. So I think I'm starting to redeem myself a little bit. So I said drawn to development economics, so I'm understanding that there is a category of economics that is not just economics as a whole. I chose to write a research project titled The Future of North Korea. So this was back before we used to do loads of like EPQs and things like that. So we just had like a school independent project, I believe. And then I said, which attempted to explore the disparities in economic growth rates between South and North Korea today. Yeah, that's nice. Again, pretty quick, easy conclusion. If they want to ask me more about it in an interview, they can. But it's pretty clear what I'm concluding, that it is inevitable for all economies to become open over time, with North Korea no exception. I really don't particularly enjoy the wording here of like open, but I can't see a way to have written that better without taking up more characters. So what you'll see is a lot of the times where I have been vague, it hasn't been on purpose necessarily, it's because I was forced into it, as you guys all know, due to the, you know, character limitation, where you know you have to discuss other things, and then you can't afford to be, okay, so, you know, if I would describe in the conditions, it would probably be difficult, let's say, to actually shove in too many different things. So I still think I could have been more accurate, but I understand how difficult it might be for you guys as well. Whilst writing this essay, I came across Paul Collier's The Bottom Billion. I found his argument that aid can actually constrain growth of countries compelling. The fact that this idea is reversed in Sachs' The End of Poverty encouraged me to think more deeply about this controversial issue. Again, I wish I would say maybe what... I think this is a little bit vague as well. You know, aid can constrain growth is fine, but the idea being reversed, I probably should have looked more into... I maybe should have mentioned like why. Why Sachs thinks that aid is useful, I think would have been better. But again, character count, I get it. I do still like the fact that I've contrasted more than one opinion. Okay, so this was kind of my management portion now, so let's have a look. I said another aspect of Korea, I am staying on topic here just because it was easier than switching entirely, and I think a developed point always sounds a little bit better than lots of different sub-points. Which I find fascinating is the domination of the economy by just 6 major conglomerates, accounting for 70% of exports in a country where exports total 56% of GDP. I'm certain that's not true anymore, but at the time it was. This is what I mean by make sure you're contextualizing your personal statements to suit the time, make sure it doesn't make sense in a few years' time, you know. You know, I think that's, at the time I remember thinking, oh, that is a fascinating statistic though, no? Like, that's something to be studied, I think. To find out how companies like these achieve such success, I decided to read Kay's Foundation of Corporate Success, a very famous book, which explained the part competitive advantage plays in market dynamics. I mean, competitive advantage, you will never stop speaking of this topic when you get to a management lecture, so I think it's pretty apt that it was used here. Just find a concept that, as I said, is really kind of native to management, I would say. Looking further into competition strategies, I came across the idea of optimal output, which led me to intrigators, mathematical optimization and economic theory. As a math student, I was keen to understand the underlying principles behind optimization theory. I think this is the best part of the statement, if I had to say myself. I think this management part is a lot stronger than the other part. You know, it's very specific, isn't it? Saying competition strategies, optimal output, you know, principles behind optimization theory. I like it because it's not vague, it's specific, which is what I was wanting for all the other parts of the statement, and I wish I had been using similar language. So does that make sense what I mean by using more specific points rather than generalizing? I think it's weird because I think the more you actually know of a subject, the more general your writing can become, because obviously economics, having studied it at A level, I actually had a lot more of a base understanding, whereas management, I had nothing, and so I had no choice but to be really specific and kind of, you know, defer to what the wording given to me in the text and things like that, and as a result, it's a lot more successful, I think, as a piece of writing. After more research, I found genetic algorithms and their influence in determining the evolution of oligopolies. I actually did get asked about this particular point because it is quite complex, I have to say. I mentioned this one in particular because I studied biology as one of my 5 A-levels, and so it linked really nicely in, I thought, and I think it's just this evolution of that oligopolies thing is actually, this whole paragraph, I was actually shocked to see that it was pretty much, it is basically university level, I would say, this section here. I learned that genetic algorithms could also be applied to game theory, such as in the case of the prisoner's dilemma when looking at the possibility of evolving cooperative behaviour. So it's kind of like, I originally started in my first draft, I think, with just the prisoner's dilemma, but the issue with that is it's so cliche. Every single person uses this, you know, so I thought, I don't want to then use some random game theory puzzle that I don't understand. How about I try and advance and see a different version of it? Because that's the thing, look into this, right? Game theory puzzles, they have many different iterations and different setups, so you can do that, right? On to the last part. So reading about these doctrines has encouraged me to take the further maths A-level course in my final year. That was not fun. So that I might fully appreciate the mathematics behind the economic concepts I am interested in future, taking part in the young, so that is pretty much it, right? That's all academic. And then this is literally my only social bit, I guess, like the extracurricular part, and even this, again, I think was a bit too long. Taking part in the Young Enterprise Scheme taught me the complexities involved in managing a group of people to create a product that people would be willing to buy, leaving me with a strong desire to learn more about philosophies behind management. I actually hate that sentence. I completely despise it, because I don't even think that's true. Like, obviously, creating a product that people would be willing to buy is in no way what management actually is, so that's like a practical application of some of the theories perhaps, but that's not what you actually study, so no, I hate that sentence. I wouldn't do anything like that. It might not be your downfall, but it's not great. My interest in management and mathematical analysis also led me to volunteers from the Finance for the Wings of Hope Achievement Award, where we succeeded in raising £3,200 for charities through various fundraising events. I don't know what I was thinking, like, you know, the fact that I am interested in management and mathematical analysis somehow helps me run a really small, basically what I'm trying to say is, like, this made me sound like I did so much more than I actually did. We didn't really do anything, we did some bake sales, you know. I didn't run the finance, I like counted some change perhaps and kept a spreadsheet. I'm not trying to undermine myself too much, but you know, I've really pushed it there. And you can too if you need, you know, just take something and then suddenly counting change becomes running finance, you know. Outside my academic interests, I spend time playing the violin. Okay, not really important, just about that. But I think what's interesting is that, you know, it's literally just this last portion, and then if you look at things that I've actually done, it's pretty much nothing, right? I mean, everybody gets really stressed about internships and things. No, I did none of that. I read quite a lot of books, and that's pretty much it. So as I said, I think I've been a little bit hypercritical. I do think overall it was fairly good, but as I said, try and make your beginning not too emotional, like not too kind of linked to some personal story, unless it is really unique, because otherwise they've seen it all, you know. Just be honest, basically. Honesty is key. What actually interested you, explore that a little bit. Try and be a little bit more specific if you can. Don't use this kind of vague language like textbook issues being relevant. You know, what does that mean, absolutely relevant? I'm still not sure. If you have done something like a society, don't just name drop it, maybe say something that you actually did in it that you were proud of, you know. It's really good to, as I said, contrast ideas that you find in readings and books. Really make sure that if you do mention a book, you do draw out a conclusion of some sort. If you mention an essay, mention what your conclusion actually was in a clear way that they can instantly understand it. Make sure you're contextualizing it, as I said, to the current day, to today. And then when in doubt, make sure you're using technical terminology taken straight from references, but do not include anything you do not understand fully, because that is a mistake and a half, because it will be so obvious. Try not to use cliches, particularly in econ, prison style of the guys, art of strategy, Avadash Dixit guys, like, try and not do that. But if you do want to do that, there's nothing wrong with it. Just, be prepared to kind of maybe try and find a different iteration. And then finally, yeah, don't worry too much about what you have and haven't physically done. But if you have done something small, just push it and then see really what you can say that links back to your degree. And they're not even going to care about that part anyway, so who really cares, right? Yeah, okay, that was, I don't know, I think it's not bad for, like, I don't know, a teenage piece of writing, I guess. But I hope you took something from that. It's not, I don't think the personal statement is overall massively crucial, so I wouldn't worry too much. But what you do have to really get clear is that you've done your research, you know what the subject is, and that you're really interested in actually studying that degree. These are the three things that you really have to do. And as much as I criticize some of the bits of writing here and there, I think that does come across. I'm clearly interested. I did actually do the reading, and as a result, I do have a full understanding of what econ and management actually is.